The madness of March is upon us. The snakes have once again been driven out of Ireland by our favorite saint, and we are well on our way to finish the semester strong. Before we start, however, I wanted to revisit the college-wide late policy that some of you are either not aware of, not happy with, or just ignoring altogether. The English departments of the 4 campuses of Delaware Technical Community College set forth a cohesive late policy which all instructors must follow. For smaller assignments, also known as the formative assessments, you have up to 48 hours to turn it in for a late penalty of 10% to your final grade on the assignment. And that's 10% of the total points, not 10% of what you earned. For the larger assignments, also known as the summative assessments, you have up to 1 week to turn it in late for a penalty of 15% to your final grade for that assignment. And again, that's 15% of the total points, not 15% of what you earned. Anything that comes in after 48 hours for formative or 1 week for summative will remain a 0. Since I was very clear about this in the very first video you should have watched for this course, I just wanted to remind you that this isn't a new policy. Sorry to bring you down so early in the video, but it needed to be said. Now that we've gotten that reviewed, let's talk about what's going on this week, shall we? As always, scroll down the page, look on the right-hand side for View the Course Schedule, click on the Master Class link, and then we're going to go all the way down to Week 10. Ooh, look at that. And there's Week 10. Wait a second. What's that I see? There were no assignments due this week? That must be a mistake, right? Let me just consult my schedule and files and make sure. No assignments due. Wow! That's pretty awesome for all of us, is it not? So, well, let's look at what we have to review for the week. Well, that makes sense. It's the most important part of your development paragraphs, the tie-in for CSET. No wonder there's nothing due. I want you to work on your development this week. So here's the schedule recommendation I'd love for you to adhere to. I have a plan that, if you follow it, you won't be stressing out the night before the paper is due, working feverishly to get everything done in just 2 hours. As you can see, as I've already joked around about, there is nothing to be submitted this week. So what should you be doing? Well, this week I want you to work on your argument portion of the paper. That would be the minimum of 3 argument points or claims that will support your side of the argument. Each one of these points will feature 1 claim, the topic sentence, and then however much evidence that you will use to prove that point. With each piece of evidence, you will have an associated setup and tie-in, as well as the piece of evidence itself. So that would be a minimum of 3 very well-developed paragraphs using CSET. Honestly, I can see 4 or 5 paragraphs, but that's just me. That means by Sunday, March 24th, 2024, which is next week, you should have your argument completed and saved in a file somewhere. After that, as you can see, we will be discussing the counter-argument and the rebuttal in Week 11 here. By the end of that week, you should have your counter-argument and rebuttal section finished. That means by the end of the month, your entire development section should be complete, minus the background section. Think about that for a second. A couple of weeks prior to the paper being due, you'll have probably 85% of the paper completed with only the introduction, the background, and the conclusion left to go. Those being the easier portions of the paper, your stress should be minimal. You're welcome. The material that you are presenting through direct quotes or paraphrases is great, but your reader can say, so what to it? The tie-in is your opportunity to say, look, I know you may not understand what I just said, so let me help you understand why it's important to me in my argument. So as you can see here, you can go into the CSET resources and see everything that's needed here. But we're going to focus on the tie-in strategies today, and that's kind of what we have to accomplish. Because by explaining the tie-in, the reader knows that you're taking the time to illustrate something very important, and the more you repeat something, the more your reader will process it as important and necessary. See what I mean? So looking through here, you can see that we have the tie-in sometimes summarizes the evidence that you have. We have elements here where the tie-in is kind of in between. We have elements where we're adding more information up top to the tie-in, and we're kind of moving forward into the rest of the paragraph. All of this material here is basically the explanation of what you just used. So by allowing yourself the repetition through summary or emphasis through new insights, you'll be able to fully engage your reader with the material. Does that make sense? Once you've gone through your CSET and your tie-ins, you can go through and complete the CSET challenge if you want. Clicking on that, you can actually run through the self-assessment just by kind of dragging, and I'm not doing this correctly, I'm just kind of moving this over so you can see it. But you can, click and then click submit. It'll tell you if you're right or wrong, where you're right, where you're wrong. If you'd like to discuss this, you're more than welcome to email me. I'll be happy to tell you why one thing is set up versus tie-in and so forth, okay? And that's the video, folks. Just a shade over 2 full pages of script and under 7 minutes. How wonderful is that? Well, regardless of what you got out of this video, I hope that you're going to take my advice with the scheduling of your paper that I mentioned earlier. If you do it how I've laid out, making sure that you get your claims done by this week and your counter-arguments done by next week, then you're not even going to be stressing out nearly as much at the end of the semester when your other classes are coming up with finals and papers and presentations. Get on it, and I hope you have a great weekend and a great week. See ya.